Kwesi Adofo-Mensah answered a lot of questions about Justin Jefferson and the contract situation, and he was more definitive than I think he's ever been. Let's talk about it. It's Locked On Vikings.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers, those of you that listen to this show every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. If you are new here, hello, welcome. My name is Luke. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is a listening app like the SiriusXM app, where you can also search out any sports team and find hometown broadcasts for that team, Wolves, Timberwolves, Wild, you name it. You can also find this show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today on the show, we've got a lot of rumor stuff to deal with, but mainly the NFL Combine is now underway. Everybody is in Indianapolis. Everybody's doing their thing, and we're getting ready to start watching the workouts and all that stuff. But that also means that we get to hear from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell for the first time since the end of the season. And they get to update us on all kinds of different situations. They both got in front of the media and answered questions. So I wanted to go over what they talked about, but the Vikings also did something. They hired Josh McCown as their quarterbacks coach. They promoted Chris O'Hara to pass game specialist, or just, I don't know, changed his role. I don't know if that actually is a promotion within like the rank and file of the hierarchy of the Vikings or not. Doesn't matter. He has a different job now. He was only QB's coach for one season, so I don't know. We'll talk about that and go through a couple of other rumor mill things that might be interesting to hear about. So let's start with what Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell had to say. Kevin O'Connell did not have a lot in his press conference. I think it got hijacked by New England media. There was like a lot of questions about the Patriots, which that might sound odd, but you got to remember he was drafted in the same draft class as Gerard Mayo. And so Gerard Mayo getting hired to be the head coach of the Patriots, they wanted to ask him about that. And it kind of veered off in its conversation about Matthew Slater and stuff. There were a couple of little nuggets, but I don't know if any of them are particularly meaningful. He was asked about the running back situation, and he said, hey, Ty Chandler did some great things down the stretch. We also liked what we got out of Madison, blah, blah, blah. Kind of non-answered it. Coaches will always gas up the players. They're not going to stand up there on the podium and be like, yeah, those dudes reek. We need a running back. But it was pretty non-committal, so I don't know if there's any news with it. And then he also spoke a little bit about what he values in a quarterback, which sounds kind of generic. But both O'Connell and Kwesi had some interesting thoughts about what they value in a quarterback in terms of overcoming context. That was a way, I think that was the way that Adofo-Mensah put it. Overcoming context, meaning, when things are breaking down, when you don't necessarily have the supporting cast. College football is a game of really extreme mismatches, right? You will have a blue chip NFL player lining up against a future Harley Davidson sales associate. You're going to see some pretty weird situations. And so there's that stress test, I guess they were saying, that they find valuable. So who does that actually mean that they're super into? Maybe some thoughts about that a little later in the show, but really the information I think that we can get that means something that we can actually take to the bank came from Kwesi's press conference. And mainly it was because of how definitive his language was. Adofo-Mensah has been extraordinarily non-committal, both in action, but especially in word. Every time he's asked about a contract situation, whether it was Danielle Hunter, Kirk Cousins when he first got here, any other number, TJ Hawkinson, any other number of like major contract negotiations that he's gone through so far, it's always been the same answer, which is we're going to this was his answer for Daniil Hunter. We've got what we want. He's got what he wants, and we're going to have to try to find a middle ground. And, it's not necessarily negotiation so much as it is problem solving. And I actually do like that angle, but that's his sort of stock answer. And he gave that answer. He was asked about Daniil Hunter's contract situation. And he said, yeah, we love Daniil Hunter. We appreciate what he did. We got to figure out a way. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. And it was very non-committal. It didn't give you any additional information. I did find it interesting that it was all future tense. It was, we will talk to him. We will try to figure something out, sort of implying that there have been no conversations thus far, which matches the reporting that we've had that Kirk Cousins that domino needs to fall before the other conversations get started. We're running out of time a little bit here. We only got 2 weeks left, but I'm sure that they've got their plan for what they're going to offer and how that I'm sure they have more of an understanding than that, right? When it came to Kirk Cousins, you've got a very similar deal. We love him as a quarterback. We want him back here. We're going to try to make it happen. Kevin O'Connell said the same thing. They've been saying that. Very consistent messaging all offseason. They like Kirk. They want to bring Kirk back. That's always what they have said. And then they go, but we have to make sure that, we can meet each other's needs and blah, 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 essentially saying, but we got to make the negotiation work and we're not guaranteeing that. We want it. We don't know if we're going to get it. But then the Jefferson questions came, and I think the tone shifted a little bit. You can watch this entire interview for yourself, by the way, rather than just having me recount it to you. But I guess a lot of times, whatever we already think is going to happen, we tend to ascribe to non-answers and pressers. And what I'm looking for in particular is strong language. When they say it's the same thing as when you read an article and they say, well, the Vikings could consider maybe trading Justin Jefferson. It's you didn't say anything. You got a clickbait thing. And when it doesn't happen, you could say, well, I only said that they could consider it, not that it was going to happen, even though that's the implication that was getting everybody to go to your website, right? And try not to do that kind of thing. But what I will say is if I can at least try to sort of read the verbiage. When Kwesi was asked, have you considered trading Justin Jefferson? He was very clear. That thought hasn't crossed my mind. And a lot of people, when you hear that kind of thing, will respond with the quote, that infamous quote from Rick Spielman. That's we have no interest in trading Percy Harvin. That came out 2 days before they did, or however long before they did trade Percy Harvin. And I don't think that applies here because technically what Rick said could be true, right? They had no intention of trading Percy Harvin. And if I remember the reporting from back then, they did have no intention of trading Percy Harvin. And then Seattle came in with an offer that blew them away. And they went, oh my God, I think we have to say yes to this. But they did not have an intention. They weren't shopping him. And so you still got information from that, even though it didn't bear out the way that it implies. With Kwesi, it's the thought has not crossed my mind, which he's gotten phone calls. He has to have gotten phone calls. And whenever Kwesi talks about those possible ideas, when he was asked about potentially trading Daniil Hunter or other, hey, what do you think about trading up to 3 in the draft from 23? And he will always be very quick to say, hey, no bad ideas, right? Let's consider everything. Everything has a price. Every player has a price. This is a big difference between Kwesi and Rick Spielman. Spielman had certain players that were perfectly off limits, that were 100%. I'm hanging up the phone the second you say his name, and I don't care what you offer me. Harrison Smith was one of those. I think Adrian Peterson was one of those for those years. But this time, he did not have that same language. He didn't say the same thing he says all the other times, which is, hey, that's going to take a lot, but we're always, the phones are always open and we're always considering blah, 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 blah. He says, nope, not doing it. Get out of here. And he went on to condemn false reporting. He actually said there have been false the reporting around the situation was false, or I forget exactly the syntax of the sentence, but he said he accused reporting of being false. I think about who that is and who has reported something about Justin Jefferson. And you look at someone like Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. He hasn't reported about Justin Jefferson. He has said they could do this. Here's why I think it would be a good idea. I would say he's opined about Justin Jefferson, but at no point has he put out information and staked his reputation on the truthfulness of it. The only report of that I know of is coming from Charlie Walters, who is at Pioneer Press, and he's been banging the drum for 3-4 weeks, saying that there's Justin Jefferson trade steam and that it's something that they're considering and all that. And he's been pretty much on an island about it, which is in and of itself a bit suspicious. If the entire, like, look, man, if you're a beat reporter on the Vikings and you catch wind that there could be Justin Jefferson trade steam and the blessing to report it, you are going to put that front and center on everything. That is your headline for a week. I mean, come on, that's the biggest cash cow. You're going to go nuts with that stuff. And the fact that it didn't really catch on anywhere else always gave me a little bit of pause. But if I had to guess, I would guess that Kwesi's kind of calling that out a little bit. I don't know. He also confirmed a report that Darren Wolfson has been running with for basically an entire year, which is that the Vikings got really close to a contract extension with Justin Jefferson, like excruciatingly close before the season began, and that deadline was kind of up. So they were very, very close to coming to terms, and they can resume from that very close state and hopefully get things done pretty quickly. Obviously, things change once you had another season, and the results of that season with Jefferson missing half the season and all that stuff might change the dynamic a little bit. And so you have to kind of solve new problems. But I think that's still going to be a lot more progress than like starting from zero. And speaking of Darren Wolfson, he has also been saying for a long time that Kwesi will be very aggressive when it comes to getting a quarterback. If he is in love with someone, he'll go crazy. We kind of saw that when it all came out last year during the draft or after the draft, that Kwesi tried really hard to get up to pick 3 with Arizona. He tried to trade up 20 spots, and he was ready to give up like a lot of draft picks, like a lot of like 5 or 6 top 100 draft picks to get up and do that. But that didn't happen. Arizona chose to go with Houston, and the rest was history. So I don't know. Felt like you could actually take a lot out of that Kwesi presser as long as you kind of know how he talks, and your alarm bells can kind of go off when he deviates from that. But that's not all. That happened on Tuesday. So we got to talk about Josh McCown and some of the other stuff that could affect the Vikings going on around the league. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy made easy. I don't know about you. I've been in therapy for years, and it's honestly been a vital ingredient to keeping me at least sort of sane for the entire time that I've had this job. This is a job where I have to get on a camera every single day, no matter what mood I'm in, and give you some kind of energetic content and have a conversation, even if I'm not feeling it socially at all. And help giving me tools to kind of reset my brain before I do something like this. Very, very helpful. Whatever you need it for, BetterHelp can help get you started and get you linked up with a therapist that is right for you and your needs. And if they try somebody and you don't like them, that is no big deal at all. You can switch to the next one, and BetterHelp is set up to help you do that. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Moving right along here with this Locked On Vikings episode. Thank you so much for having a listen. If you want to get a little bit more into the draft prospects instead of all of these stupid rumors, you can go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. I've got a video out on Chop Robinson that I am really happy with, actually. I love Chop Robinson. I talked about him on the show last week, and if you want some visuals for that, you can find it there. You can also go to the Locked On Minnesota Sports page and find their live 24/7 streaming channel, Minnesota Sports Talk, all day, every day, all of the biggest news and stories broken down from Locked On shows like this one, but for every Minnesota sports team. Go check it out. Let's move on to the coaching news of the day, which is that the Vikings have brought in Josh McCown to be their quarterbacks coach. Who'd have thunk it way back in 2003 when he was throwing that devastating touchdown pass to Nate Poole that he would eventually be the quarterbacks coach? Actually, that could have been a decent prediction, because like not so great quarterbacks on 4-12 teams tend to be coaches eventually. And hey, that's where Sean Mannion went. That's where Josh McCown is. So I guess there's like 2 ways that you can interpret this. There are a lot of ways that people have interpreted this. I think that there's 2 theories that I've seen the most, because it's an odd move. They had Chris O'Hara on staff. By all accounts, they had been plenty happy with the way that he had worked with Kirk Cousins. They loved the way that, they worked with those backup quarterbacks and stuff. Like, this is not firing Chris O'Hara. If anything, he got a promotion to pass game specialist, which the Vikings now have 2 of, and a pass game coordinator. No run game coordinator. They've got an O-line coach, I guess, but no run game coordinator. So you can tell where the Vikings' priorities lie. But moving Chris O'Hara out of that job and bringing in Josh McCown either means that they kind of had a spot carved out for Sean Mannion, and then he ended up taking a job with the Packers. So we got to replace him. So let's go get Josh McCown, who had been fired along with everybody on that Carolina staff after 1 year there. That was kind of just the whole thing got wiped out. Or they understand Josh McCown to be a guy that's really good at developing young quarterbacks, and they are intending to get a young quarterback. And this is actually the reveal that tells us that they really are into a young quarterback, which, like, if you don't think they're into a young quarterback, I want to hear from you. Actually, I'm curious to know why you don't think that they're into that. Whether or not they sign Kirk Cousins, they're probably going to be really into developing a quarterback pretty soon. Like, he's getting long in the tooth, right? But for that reason, because it kind of seems like such a no-brainer, I don't know if you can ascribe the hiring of Josh McCown to that. I think they saw an opportunity to bring somebody in, and they liked him, and they brought him in. By the way, Josh McCown definitely knows Kevin O'Connell. They've been on teams together. Kwesi was in Cleveland when Josh McCown was in Cleveland. There's all kinds of connections all over the place. And I think the Josh McCown connections are what make people very excited. Because Josh McCown, he was a high school coach for a while. If you remember, there was this whole saga where it looked like the Texans were going to hire him as a head coach just out of nowhere, just hadn't coached at all, but they were just going to hire him like straight out of the league, like Norm Van Brocklin style. And that fell through, and then he went to coach at a high school. And while he was at that high school, I think it was Myers County or something, Myers Park High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Drake May played. He was an assistant there at the time. Josh McCown was. So everybody's throwing out the eyeball emojis and saying, whoa, does that mean they're really into Drake May? Which, again, I say, like, well, of course they are. He's like the top 2 quarterback in this draft. Of course they're into Drake May. The obstacle to the Vikings acquiring Drake May was not going to be their interest in Drake May. That's going to be, we need him to fall at least past the 2nd pick, probably past the 3rd pick, which feels difficult to project. Although, hey, if you listen to the right rumors, there are some rumors that say, oh, the NFL's not as high on Drake May as everybody might think. Who knows, right? I don't really want to get bogged down in that. There's also the connection of Josh McCown and Sam Darnold. When Sam Darnold was a young quarterback, Josh McCown kind of mentored him when he was in his first couple years. And so they've developed a relationship. Sam Darnold, I believe, is a free agent this year. Yeah, he's a free agent, 27 years old, and maybe he's a guy that comes in. And before you freak out, I don't think anybody's going to make Sam Darnold their QB of the future and say, let's go, he's our Super Bowl winning guy. But as a bridge quarterback / backup competition for Nick Mullins or whatever, maybe that's somebody that could come with. And that to me feels a little bit more persuasive than, this means they're going to draft Drake May, because again, like, that's easier said than done. And they probably had plenty of interest in Drake May, whether or not Josh McCown was in the building. But if Drake May does have some, super unexpected fall in the draft, we've certainly seen stranger things. Hey, remember it? Aaron Rodgers fallen, right? I mean, I probably can come up with a better one than something like 20 years old. But hey, we've seen. I mean, Malik Willis was supposed to be a first rounder by all accounts, right? He fell all the way out. So for one, that's a couple years ago, and the NFL turned out to be pretty vindicated on that. It's going to have to come down to that sort of precipitous fall. Like, that is something that will have to happen with any quarterback for the Vikings to get their hands on him. I don't think the Bears are ready to sell pick number 1 overall in the division. Although, hey, Kwesi loves to trade within the division, so maybe it's possible. Here's the other thing about Josh McCown, and it's not a question that I can answer today. It's actually one that I want to kind of dedicate a whole show to, because I think it's pretty interesting. So Josh McCown, as a developer of young talent, let's say that that's what we're doing here. And it's not just a guy that both Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi know from the other stops in the league that is available that they want to bring onto their staff, which to me feels like it's sort of the Occam's razor. It's the boring option, but it's like, I don't know, both the head coach and GM know this guy, and he's pretty respected around the league. I don't think we need a conspiracy to determine why the Vikings brought him in. And I don't think we need a conspiracy to determine why Josh McCown chose the Vikings. He knows both the head coach and the GM. That's pretty good. You don't get that a lot of places. But let's say it is, they're super planning to draft a rookie, let Kirk walk, which, hey, that could be. And he's there to be the developmental guru. You're probably screaming at me to mention that he was the Carolina Panthers quarterbacks coach last year, and Bryce Young stumbled out of the gate. Bryce Young, who was blow for blow with CJ Stroud, there was a whole debate this time last year over which one of those two guys was better. That was split very 50-50, and Bryce Young went first and CJ Stroud did better. You might say that the Texans did a better job of nurturing their quarterback than the Panthers did, and that's going to be on the QB coaches, including Josh McCown. So the next question you have to raise is, was that Josh McCown's fault? Is he bad at coaching quarterbacks? He's pretty new to coaching quarterbacks, especially in the NFL. He's not that far removed from being a backup quarterback in the NFL, so he's still pretty green as far as coaches go, only a few years of experience. So we have to kind of address that question. And what level of the Carolina Panthers offensive failure do you place on Bryce Young himself, on Frank Reich, on Josh McCown, on the supporting cast, Adam Thielen and everybody else? What level of blame do you place on everybody is a pretty difficult question to get to in the middle of a talking point about something else. So I'm going to circle back to that one, but put a pin in it because I think it's interesting. Elsewhere around the league, the rumors are starting to fly, and I want to try to keep tabs on at least the stuff I think could affect the Vikings. So that's going to be next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book because new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 as long as your bet wins. You can find anything over there with the ongoing NHL and NBA games, as well as college basketball and anything else going on in the world of sports and beyond. You can find the heaviest favorite you can find. You can live bet in the middle of a game on somebody that's winning by 30. And as long as that $5 bet wins, you get $150 back in bonus bets. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign in there, make a $5 bet and win it. You can get 30-1 on that. $150 on a $5 bet. You won't find odds like that on heavy favorites anywhere else. That's at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Next on Locked On Vikings, let's take a quick peek outside of Minnesota and see what's going on around the rest of the league. And in particular, I want to talk a minute about Chicago. I've spoken with Lauren Cox a little bit, who does Locked On Bears, who honestly you should keep a little bit of tabs on right now on Locked On Bears, because everything starts in Chicago. They've got the #1 overall pick. They've got a hot commodity of a young quarterback that they're trying to trade away. It sounds like, but they're also trying to be cheeky about that. Maybe they won't trade him away. Maybe they just take Marvin Harrison Jr. or they trade down or something like that, or take a tackle like Joe Alt at the top, or whoever is supposed to be the blue chip player, and they don't take a quarterback at all. There's all kinds of options, and there's this crazy crossroads for Chicago right now, where if they make the right decision or the wrong decision now, it could affect them for years in a way that is just, it's always a little bit true in everyone's offseason, right? If you hit a good draft pick, it could be your guy for 10 years, right? But it's particularly true in Chicago now. It is all building up to, can they nail it? And a lot of what that means is what happens with Justin Fields, what happens at 1 overall. What we're looking at right now as Vikings fans is the quarterback dynamic ahead of us in the draft. I think everybody can pretty much identify that there are 4 QB needy teams ahead of the Vikings in the draft, if you count the Bears. If you don't count the Bears, it's 3, right? From the way it sounds, we count the Bears. And let's count the Bears for now, just for the sake of argument. So if it's them, and then the Commanders and the Patriots, and then the Falcons, those are the teams that are not happy with their quarterbacks. Raheem Morris even confirmed this, if you had any idea that the Falcons would run with Desmond Ridder again. He said, look, if we had better quarterback play, I may not be standing here at the podium, essentially saying quarterback sucked and Arthur Smith got fired over it. I don't think he's sticking with those guys. I don't know about you. And Ryan Poles has tried to be a little bit more cheeky about it. And what he's said on the podium at the Combine was basically, hey, we're going to try to do right by Justin Fields. we're going to make this decision soon. And when we do, we're going to try to trade him sooner rather than later. We don't want to, make him sit around and wait, not knowing his fate. We want him to know where he's going to play and what's going to happen so that he can start preparing, which is, a respectful way to conduct yourself in this situation where you might be divorcing with a guy that you just traded 2 first round picks to draft, not, 4 years ago. So they're going to try that. But what that tells me is, they're considering that, right? I don't think that if they were sticking with Fields, you would probably hear kind of those Josh Rosen is our guy kind of things, or if they even really wanted you to think that that was maybe a possibility. But no, they want the world to know that Justin Fields is open for business. And he is for sale. And that is, if I'm the Jets or whatever, or if I'm the Falcons, who have emerged as the front runner to land Justin Fields, that's what I'm hearing out of that is, they're going to try to trade Justin Fields and they want to do it quick. All right, well, let's get on the phone. And that's the message I think the Bears want to send. They want people to start dialing them, and they want people to start dialing them right now. If that were to transpire, it would be very good for the Vikings because it would remove one of those 4 teams, right? If the Falcons are the team that gets Justin Fields, and then they don't get a quarterback, now it's 1, 2, 3. You're almost certainly getting Caleb Williams now for the Bears. But it's sort of the same as if Justin Fields ends up being the quarterback for the Bears, and then the Bears don't draft a quarterback, which doesn't feel like the move that they're going to go with. But, if you only have 3 teams ahead of you, then the Vikings get to be the 4th, and maybe, just maybe, they can be the 3rd because there have also been a lot of national rumors that I don't personally really buy. Feels like smoke to me, but I don't have any reasoning for that other than a gut feeling. So, take that for what you will. But these rumors have said that the Patriots are exploring trading down. Both the Patriots and Bears, there's been a lot of talk of them trading down in the draft. The Commanders, not so much. I think everybody's just sort of penciling them in for one of these quarterbacks, but both of these teams have responded to this by essentially saying, hey, anything's possible, kind of that Kwesi, no bad ideas, option. That's there, but you got to give us a lot. It's going to take a lot to move us off the spot, and essentially saying, all right, but you better come, you're not going to lowball us, which is both fair and also probably a wise thing to say for the sake of negotiations. So all of this adds up to a big giant we'll see, which is always what the draft is. But as quarterback situations kind of finalize themselves, and we will see what happens with Kirk Cousins by March 11th. We will know what has happened with Cousins, with Danielle Hunter, also Marcus Davenport. Those situations will be resolved by, the second week in March. It is February 28th today. So we're getting there. And then we'll have a much clearer sense of exactly what the draft board looks like. And then you can start talking about, well, what if the Vikings traded up to pick 3? And what if they traded down? And who's going to be available? And all of those questions get way, way, way clearer once we've seen how free agency sort of plays itself out. Because not only is Justin Fields an option for, say, Atlanta or New England or even Washington, but Kirk Cousins is also an option for Atlanta and New England. And boy, would it be funny if it were Washington, if you went back there. It feels more, I don't know, I keep saying this. It feels more possible than you would think, but it certainly doesn't feel likely. All of it is a big wait and see, but I guess that's where the scuttlebutt is coming out of the combine. I'll try to keep you posted best I can from what is sort of leaked around the internet that I have access to. And we'll go through this journey together, all right? I'll see y'all tomorrow, and as always, Skull.